The void between stars is not silent. It is a tapestry of whispers, a symphony of cosmic radiation and the distant dying breaths of suns. For the species that ply the dark, it is a highway, a hunting ground, a home. We believed we were its masters. We were the Cthar. Our name, in the guttural tongue of our homeworld, means the unblinking. We were the apex predators of the galactic food chain for 1,000 cycles. Our history was written in the scorched husks of rival civilizations and the silent, plundered riches of worlds we deemed ripe. Our doctrine was simple, honed by millennia of conquest: find, assess, cull, and consume. We scanned for certain energy signatures, for the telltale electromagnetic chatter of developing sentience. When we found it, we descended. Not as invaders in a grand war, for war implies a contest of equals. No, we descended as a force of nature. A harvest. The galaxy called us the Reapers. We found the term apt. Our scouts first detected the Sol system on the outer fringe of the Orion Spur. The third planet was a vibrant, noisy jewel. Radio waves spilled from its atmosphere, a cacophony of primitive signals. We saw their orbital satellites, clumsy metal gnats. We observed their cities, glowing like infected wounds on the planetary surface. They called themselves humanity. Our initial assessment was dismissive. Bipedal, soft-skinned, limited natural weaponry. Their technology was a patchwork of barely understood principles: combustion, fission, rudimentary ion drives. They were quarreling, tribal, tearing at their own world and each other with a fascinating, if pathetic, ferocity. To the high conclave of the Cthar, they were not a threat. They were a resource. Their planet was rich in biomass and minerals. Their civilization, their art, their culture, it would make interesting trophies. The order was given. The Hunt Fleet, 100 ships of polished, obsidian-like chitin, their forms shaped by bioengineering into things of terrifying beauty, shifted from the void. They moved like shadows, silent and inevitable. Their destination, Earth. The Cthar did not come for a fight. They came for a culling. They thought humanity was prey. They were about to learn the fatal final error of that assumption. The first sign was the silence. Across the globe, satellites winked out. Not with an explosion, but with a soft final cessation of signal. GPS networks failed, sending autonomous vehicles spiraling into chaos. Then, the deep space radio telescopes, humanity's ears to the universe, went dead. The great dishes of Arecibo, of FAST, of the Deep Space Network, were rendered deaf by an unseen, overwhelming static. On the bridge of the Cthar flagship, the Claw of Rend, Overpredator Krostar, observed the panicked flurry on the planet below. His multifaceted eyes, reflecting 1,000 tiny images of the blue world, narrowed with satisfaction. "Observe," he rasped, his voice like grinding stones. "The herd stirs. They sense the storm, but they do not comprehend its nature." His tactical predator, Vorlak, scanned the data streams. Biomass estimates are confirmed, Overpredator. Neurological activity is frenetic, but disorganized. Their global networks are collapsing into incoherence. Standard terror response. "It is always the same," Krostar mused, flexing a clawed hand. "The first stage is confusion. The second, futile resistance. Then despair. And finally, silence. Begin the descent protocol. Let them see their gods." The shadows in Earth's high orbit coalesced. 100 Cthar vessels, each the size of a mountain range, blotted out the stars. They were angular, terrifying, utterly alien. They made no demands. They issued no declarations. Their communication was a single planet-wide psychic pulse, a wave of pure predatory intent that slammed into every sentient mind. It wasn't a language. It was a feeling. Aprimal, gut-wrenching. Certainty of being hunted. Panic, as predicted, was instantaneous. Cities descended into bedlam. But amidst the chaos, something else stirred. Something the Cthar sensors, calibrated for biological fear and technological breakdown, failed to categorize. In a command bunker deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, General Ada Rostova stared at a bank of flickering screens. The room hummed with a tense, controlled energy. The world outside was falling apart, but in here, a cold, hard knot of resolve was forming. "Report," she said, her voice calm. a stark contrast to the psychic echo still ringing in their skulls. No communications with lunar colony or Mars outpost. We've lost all eyes in the sky. Ground-based radar is painting. Sir, we're looking at over 100 contacts. Their size. The numbers are impossible. Assume they are possible, Rostova countered. What are they doing? Nothing. Just holding position. It's like they're waiting. Another officer looked up, his face pale. General, we're receiving reports of localized atmospheric disturbances. They're deploying smaller craft. They're coming down. Rostova's jaw tightened. She keyed a global command frequency, a line kept for the end of the world. This is General Rostova, NORAD Command. All Terran Defense Pact Forces, acknowledge. Execute Contingency Protocol Ares. I repeat, execute Ares. The sky is falling. Let's show them what we built to catch it. The Cthar drop pods fell like black tears. They slammed into the heart of humanity's greatest cities, New York, Shanghai, Moscow, Cairo. From them emerged the Cthar hunters. 8 feet tall, clad in organic-looking armor, they moved with a fluid, terrifying grace. Their energy weapons, living symbiotes fused to their arms, discharged pulses of incandescent plasma that vaporized steel and concrete. They were not there to fight soldiers. They were there to cull the herd. To demonstrate absolute superiority. In Times Square, a hunter strode through the screaming crowds, its weapon humming. It was methodical, efficient. A blast, a cloud of ash, silence. It was the embodiment of death. A young man, frozen in terror, tripped and fell before it. The hunter raised its arm. This was the natural order. A split second before it fired, a high-velocity tungsten rod, fired from a railgun battery in New Jersey, streaked through the atmosphere and struck the hunter square in the chest. There was no explosion. Just a kinetic transfer of energy so immense that the hunter simply ceased to exist, its constituent atoms pulverized into a fine mist that painted the ruins behind it. On the claw of Rend, Vorlak flinched. Over Predator. We have lost Hunter Unit 734. Kinetic impact. Extreme velocity. Krostar was unimpressed. A startled animal may kick. It does not change its fate. They have pointed their stingers. Now we break them. The Cthar fleet responded. Lance beams of emerald energy, capable of glassing continents, lanced down. They targeted military installations, power grids, communication hubs. The planet's surface erupted in fire. The human resistance, what little there was, seemed to be crumbling. From orbit, it looked like the final spasmodic twitches of a dying world. The Cthar had seen it all before. A species always fights back. It is part of the harvest. The struggle makes the meat taste better. But they failed to notice the patterns in the chaos. They didn't see that the railgun strike in New York was one of dozens of coordinated, near-simultaneous counterattacks across the globe. They didn't register that their planet's scouring beams, while devastating, were being absorbed and dissipated by a hidden network of deep Earth silos and orbital shield generators that had activated in the first moments of the attack. They were causing damage, yes, but they were not achieving the swift, total obliteration they were accustomed to. They saw the fires, but they were blind to the embers that still glowed beneath the ashes. They had categorized humanity as prey, and in their supreme arrogance, they did not think to update their assessment. They did not understand that humanity's true strength was not in its fangs or its claws, but in its stubborn, illogical, and infinitely adaptable will to survive. A will that was now shifting, coldly and deliberately, from defense to hunt. Beneath the frozen wastes of Antarctica, in a facility known as Ice Station Odin, a different kind of war council was assembling. This was not a meeting of generals, but of survivors, scientists, and specialists. The room was illuminated by holographic displays showing the global devastation, but the mood was not one of despair. It was one of grim, focused calculation. Dr. Eris Thorne, a xenobiologist whose theories on extraterrestrial life had been mocked for decades, pointed a laser pointer at a hologram of a Cthar hunter. They're classic apex predators. Their entire society, their technology, is based on a single simple paradigm: predation. They expect their prey to do one of two things: flee in terror, or fight back with brute force. They are masters of countering both. He zoomed in on the hunter's anatomy. They have exceptional forward-facing vision for tracking targets, but their peripheral and low-frequency sensory perception is limited. They rely on their ships for strategic data. They are, for all their power, tactically rigid. General Rostova, her image patched in from Cheyenne, nodded. So we don't fight their war. We don't meet their fleet with ours. Our few remaining orbital platforms are just bait. Exactly, said a new voice. It belonged to Captain Jax Valerius, commander of the 1st Ghost Battalion, his face smudged with soot and his uniform torn. He had just been extracted from the ruins of Paris. They're looking for an army to crush. So we don't give them one. We give them ghosts. We give a nightmare. This was the birth of the Arachne strategy. While the Cthar focused on crushing the visible conventional forces of humanity, the unseen war began. In the flooded streets of Venice, Cthar patrols would simply vanish. Not killed in a firefight, but taken. The only evidence left behind were strange, fibrous cables snaking down from the corroding rooftops, and a single universal message graffitied on a wall in the hunter's own blood: Sic semper tyrannis. In the dense jungles of the Amazon, hunters found themselves hunted. Their advanced thermal scopes were useless in the humid, bioluminescent heat. They were stalked by figures who moved without sound, who used poison darts tipped with neurotoxins derived from local frogs, toxins that the Cthar, having never evolved on this world, had no biological defense against. The hunters would be found days later paralyzed, their own weapons dismantled and laid neatly beside them. The Cthar were masters of the open field. So humanity dragged them into the mud. On the Claw of Rend, Vorlak's reports were becoming increasingly frantic. Over Predator, we are experiencing catastrophic attrition rates at the subplanetary level. Our hunter units are being neutralized with an efficiency that defies their technological profile. They are not using standard warfare. It is asymmetrical, devious. Krostar felt a flicker of something unfamiliar. Irritation. Devious? Explain. They use the environment itself as a weapon. They have turned their own urban sprawls into lethal traps. They use sonic devices to disorient, chemical agents to degrade our armor, and they communicate on frequencies we cannot intercept. They are learning, over Predator. Adapting. In real time. Impossible. Krostar snarled. They are prey. Prey does not lay traps for the hunter, Vorlak countered, a dangerous breach of protocol. Prey does not study its predator's anatomy to create customized toxins. There is a cold, calculated intelligence to this resistance. It is not born of fear. It is born of rage. The human response was not a single, glorious battle. It was 1,000 cuts, administered across the globe by a species that had turned its entire planet into a weapon. Farmers used industrial fertilizer to create massive fuel-air explosives. Computer hackers, operating from hidden server farms, managed to introduce a devastating logic worm into the Cthar's lower-level command networks, causing supply ships to veer off course and crash into each other. School teachers, using textbooks on basic chemistry, taught communities how to create potent incendiaries from household chemicals. Humanity was not a single army. It was a hive mind of stubborn, brilliant, and ferociously creative individuals, united by a single unbreakable will: you will not take our home. The Cthar, for the first time in their long bloody history, were not just facing resistance. They were facing a problem that could not be solved by sheer firepower. They were facing an idea. And ideas are bulletproof. The climax of this shadow war came with Operation Golem. Dr. Thorne and his team had a hypothesis. The Cthar psychic pulse was not just a weapon, it was their primary means of command and control, a low-level telepathic network that connected the hunters to their ships and to each other. It was how they coordinated their flawless attacks. Using data gathered from captured Cthar equipment and live dissections of the hunters, Thorne's team developed a counterpulse. It wasn't a weapon to destroy their minds, but a virus. A psychic scream of pure, undiluted, human chaos. It was the sound of 1,000,000 defiant voices. It was the roar of a stadium crowd, the whispered prayers of a mother, the furious curses of a soldier, the cold logic of a scientist, and the desperate hope of a child. It was the entire messy, beautiful, and terrifying symphony of the human spirit, compressed into a single psychic blast. They broadcast it from a repurposed deep space network antenna in Australia, amplifying it with the power of a dozen stolen Cthar energy cores. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic for the Cthar ground forces. Hunters clutched their heads, their unified command network overloading. They were suddenly terrifyingly alone, isolated from the hive mind that guided them. And in that moment of confusion, the ghosts emerged from the shadows. Captain Valerius and his ghosts, no longer needing to hide their movements, moved in. They didn't fight with energy weapons. They used monomolecular edged blades, high-caliber rifles, their own hands. It was brutal, intimate, and merciless. The hunters, disconnected and reeling, were cut down. For the first time, the Cthar knew what it was like to be the prey. On the Claw of Rend, the bridge was in turmoil. Alarm sigils flashed blood-red. The planetary network is down. We have lost all contact with our hunter legions.
LAK screamed.
A psychic event. The origin is the prey species. They have weaponized their own consciousness. Krastar stared at the planet, his supreme confidence finally shattered. The blue-green world no longer looked like a ripe fruit. It looked like a glistening, venomous insect, and it had just stung him. He had come to cull a herd of sheep. He had instead stumbled into a nest of hornets. And the hornets were now looking up, their stingers poised, their eyes fixed on the shadow in the sky. The hunt was over. The war for Earth was about to begin. A profound silence had fallen over the command bunker at Cheyenne Mountain. The frantic reports of battle had ceased. The screens now showed a new chilling reality. The Cthar fleet, which had hung in orbit like a suspended judgment, was moving. Not to retreat. To enact a final, terrible solution. They're reorienting, a sensor tech said, her voice hollow. The primary weapons of the flagship are powering up. Energy signature exceeds anything we've recorded. Sir, they're going to scorch the planet. They're going to burn it all. General Rostova felt a cold knot form in her stomach. They had won the ground war. They had broken the hunter legions. But they were still trapped on the planet, and the hunter in the sky was about to burn down the forest to kill the hornets. She looked at the faces of her staff, exhausted, determined, but now shadowed by the finality of the moment. They had fought with everything they had, and it wasn't enough. Then, a new alert chimed, soft and insistent. A private channel, encrypted with a code that hadn't been used in decades. General, a comms officer said, confused. We're receiving a transmission. Point of origin, the Oort cloud. It's the Odyssey. The Odyssey. The name was a legend, a ghost story. Humanity's first, and only generation ship. Launched over a century ago with 10,000 colonists in cryo-sleep, its destination was a promising world in the Tau Ceti system. It had fallen silent 50 years into its journey. Presumed lost. A monument to human ambition and fallibility. Rostova's heart hammered against her ribs. Put it through. The screen flickered to life. The face that appeared was ancient, the skin pale and stretched tight over the skull, the eyes burning with a fierce, cold light. But it was human. General Rostova, the figure said, his voice a dry whisper that seemed to carry the chill of interstellar space. I am Commander Elias Vance, of the Generation Ship Odyssey. We have been listening. We have been watching. It appears you could use a hand. On the bridge of the Claw of Rend, Krastar was moments from giving the order to purge the planet. Let the trophies burn. The species was an aberration, a cancer that needed to be excised from the galaxy. Over Predator.
LAK shrieked.
New contacts. Emerging from the system's outer debris field. One massive vessel, and numerous smaller escorts. Their energy signatures, they are not Cthar. Space itself seemed to tear open at the edge of the solar system. From the darkness emerged a ship unlike anything ever built by human or Cthar hands. The Odyssey was not sleek or organic. It was a jagged asymmetrical mountain of welded asteroid iron, scarred by micrometeorites and cosmic radiation. It was ugly, brutal, and immense. It was not a ship designed for beauty or speed. It was a ship designed for one thing: survival. For 100 years, it had endured the utter blackness of the void, its crew adapting, evolving, and building with the resources they could scavenge from comets and rogue planets. And around it, spilling out of its hangar bays like angry wasps, was a fleet. Not of warships, but of mining vessels, construction tugs, and colony transports, all brutally retrofitted with railguns, missile batteries, and thick slabs of armor. These were not soldiers. They were engineers, miners, and farmers. And they were furious. The Odyssey had not been lost. It had been silent because it had been busy. It had become a mobile fortress, a nomadic civilization that had turned its journey of peace into a crusade of vengeance for a home it never thought it would see again. Commander Vance's voice crackled across every open channel, human and Cthar. Cthar Fleet. This is Commander Elias Vance of the Terran vessel Odyssey. You have attacked our home. You have threatened our species. You have made a fundamental error in judgment. You thought you were hunting prey. A targeting laser from the Odyssey, a beam of coherent light as thick as a sequoia tree, lanced out and painted the claw of Rend. You thought our strength was in our cities, our armies, our technology. You were wrong. Our strength is in our will. It is in our ability to endure the unendurable, to hope in the face of despair, to fight on when all is lost. It is the stubborn refusal to die. The retrofitted human fleet, a ragtag armada of scavengers and survivors, surged forward. They didn't fly in elegant formations. They moved like a brawling mob, each ship acting on its own initiative, yet forming a perfect chaotic whole. A mining ship used its industrial laser cutter to slice open the hull of a Cthar cruiser. A colony transport, its cargo bays filled with rocks, rammed another, sacrificing itself to create an opening. You sought to cull us, Vance's voice continued, cold as the void. You saw us as a resource to be harvested. But you failed to understand the nature of your quarry. We are not docile cattle. We are a virus. We are a plague. And you have just infected yourself. The Odyssey's main weapon, a gravitational singularity projector they had reverse-engineered from a dead alien race they'd encountered in the dark, fired. It didn't emit light or energy. It emitted a point of impossible density. A tiny fleeting black hole that appeared in the center of the Cthar fleet. Ships were torn from their formations, their spars of chitin and metal screaming as they were crushed into a singularity of their own making. It was not a clean death. It was an unraveling of physics itself. Krostar watched in horror as his mighty hunt fleet, the scourge of 1,000 worlds, was being systematically dismantled by a species that should have been extinct. He saw a people who, when faced with annihilation, did not break. They shattered, and each shard became a new sharp-edged weapon. They fought with the cold fury of a cornered animal and the strategic genius of a master tactician simultaneously. His own hunters were disciplined, powerful, but predictable. These humans were chaos incarnate. A miner with a jury-rigged plasma drill would sacrifice his ship to cripple a Cthar engine, while a billion-dollar stealth fighter piloted by a teenager would slip through the resulting chaos to deliver a killing blow to the bridge. This was not war as the Cthar understood it. This was a pestilence. The Claw of Rend, battered and bleeding atmosphere, was the last ship remaining. The Odyssey moved to point-blank range, its pitted, scarred hull dwarfing the elegant Cthar flagship. On the view screen, the ancient face of Commander Vance appeared one last time.
Overpredator Krastar.
You came to our world to teach us a lesson about the natural order. You came to show us that we were prey. He leaned forward, his eyes like chips of glacial ice. The lesson is over. We have completed our final exam. And we are giving you a failing grade. A final point-blank blast from the Odyssey's railguns, salvaged from 100 asteroid mining operations, punched through the claw of Rend's bridge. Krostar had a final, fleeting moment of clarity. He saw not the face of his killer, but the image of the blue planet below. He saw its resilience, its fury, its boundless, terrifying capacity to adapt and overcome. He had not been hunting prey. He had been poking a bear. He had been kicking a hornet's nest. He had been threatening the children of a species that had clawed its way to the top of a world red in tooth and claw, a species that had looked into the abyss of its own extinction a dozen times and had only ever responded by inventing a new way to fight back. The galaxy had a new apex predator. In the quiet that followed the battle, the people of Earth emerged from their shelters and bunkers. They looked up at a sky now clear of obsidian shadows. The stars were visible again. And among them, glinting in the sun, was the ugly, beautiful, magnificent form of the Odyssey, a lost child come home. The Cthar were gone. Their fleet was dust. Their hunters were silent. The story of their defeat would ripple through the galaxy, a warning to any who would look upon humanity and see a soft, easy target. We learned something about ourselves that day. We learned that our compassion, our art, our love, these are not weaknesses. They are the reasons we fight. They are the wellspring of our fury. The Cthar had no home to defend, only territories to conquer. They had no children to protect, only genetic legacies to perpetuate. They had no love, only possession. And in the end, that was why they lost. They thought our fragility made us weak. They did not understand that it is the cracked vessel that knows the value of what it holds. They thought our emotions made us irrational. They did not comprehend that a mother's rage has the power to move stars. We are human. We are messy, we are flawed, we are often our own worst enemies. But when a threat comes from the dark, when the shadow falls and the hunt begins, we do something extraordinary. We stop being individuals. We become a single, unified, and terrifying force. We become the storm. The Cthar came to our world expecting a hunt. They left as a cautionary tale. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.